Daryl Davis, the great Daryl Davis in the room. He's got a book called Clandestine Relationships. I get that. Relationships. Clandestine Relationships. Welcome to the show, Daryl.
Thank you very much, Karen. I really appreciate your having me on.
Listen, Daryl Davis, this work that you do. Okay, so music soothes the savage beast. Music is the great connector. We just had D Nice. Music is healing. It is wholesome. It is love. It is pure. It is pure. How did you? First of all, tell us your first interaction with a neo-Nazi Klans person. How did that even happen?
My first positive reaction. Well, I'm a professional musician, and I got my degree in music from Howard University and have been performing and touring the world ever since. But I found myself one night in the town of Frederick, Maryland, about an hour and 20 minutes outside of Washington, D.C., at a place called the Silver Dollar Lounge. And the Silver Dollar Lounge was known to be like an all-white lounge. Not that Black people could not go in there, but they simply did not go in there by their own choice. And it was a good choice because they were not welcome. And when you go somewhere and you're not welcome and alcohol is being served, it's not a good idea. So I was the only Black person playing in this country Western band. I had just joined the band. Country music had made a resurgence. And
what instrument? What are you playing?
Keyboard, piano, keyboard. And so I was the only Black person in the band, only Black person in the whole place. And we had just finished our first set of music. Now, they had played there before. It was my first time. And we were walking over to the band table to have a seat on the break when I felt somebody come up behind me and put their arm around my shoulder. Now, I don't know anybody in this Silver Dollar Lounge, right? So I'm like turning around to see who's touching me. And it was a white gentleman, maybe 15, 18 years older than me, a big smile on his face. And he says, "Man, I sure love your piano playing." I said, "Thank you, I appreciate that." And I shook his hand. And then he says, "This is the first time I ever heard a Black man play piano like Jerry Lee Lewis." And I wasn't offended, but I was surprised that, given his age being older than me, that he did not know the Black origin of Jerry Lee Lewis's piano style. And I proceeded to explain to him that style that Jerry Lee plays comes from Black, blues, and boogie-woogie piano players. That's where rock and roll, rockabilly evolved. And I got it from the same place. Well, he did not believe in the Black origin of the music and said, I ain't never seen no Black man play piano like that except for you. So I'm thinking, okay, well, the guy never saw Little Richard or Fats Domino. Yeah. And I told the guy, I know Jerry Lee Lewis personally. He's a good friend of mine. He's told me himself where his influences came. The guy did not believe that I knew Jerry Lee either, but he was so fascinated with me, he wanted me to come back to his table and let him buy me a drink. So I went back to his table. I don't drink alcohol, but I let him buy me a cranberry juice. And he took his glass and he clinks my glass and cheers me. And then he says, this is the first time I ever sat down with a Black man and had a drink. Now I'm totally mystified. How can this be? Because in my lifetime, at that point, I had sat down literally with thousands of white people and had a meal, a beverage, a conversation. How was it that this guy had never done that before? So innocently, I asked him, I said, why? And he stared down at the tabletop and didn't answer me. I asked him again, and his buddy sitting next to him said, tell him. I said, tell me, because now I'm, what's the secret here? He looked back at me just as plain as day, and he said, I'm a member of the Ku Klux Klan. And I burst out laughing because I didn't believe him. I thought, this guy is joking with me. I know a lot about the Klan. And they don't just come up and hug somebody, Black person, and want to buy him a drink and hang out. It doesn't work that way. So I think, the guy's, joking with me. I'm laughing. He goes inside his pocket, pulls out his wallet, and hands me his Klan membership card. I look at this thing. Whoa. I recognize the Klan insignia, which is a red circle with a white cross and a red blood drop in the center of the cross. This thing was for real. So I stopped laughing and I gave it back to him. And we talked about the Klan and some other things, but he gave me his phone number and wanted me to call him whenever I was to return to this bar with this band, because he wanted to bring his friends, his Klansmen and Klanswomen friends to see the black guy who plays like Jerry Lee. Now, I'm not sure he called me a black guy to his friends, but that was the idea. So I'd call him every 6 weeks and say, hey, man, we're going to be down at the Silver Dollar this weekend. Come on out. He'd come out both nights, Friday and Saturday. I'd call him on a Wednesday or Thursday. He'd be there. And he'd bring Klansmen and Klanswomen to watch me play. And they'd gather around the bandstand and watch me play the piano. And then they'd get out on the dance floor and they'd dance to our music. Now they didn't come in robes and hoods, right? This came in regular street clothes. So on the breaks, I would go to his table just to say hello. Some of the Klan people were curious and they want, to meet me and talk to me and find out where I learned how to play like Jerry Lee. But others, would see me coming and they'd get up and move to another side of the room. So the message was, we don't want to talk to you. We don't want to touch you. We just want to look at you, kind of thing. And that was fine. And then I left that band at the end of that year and I went back to playing rock and roll and whatever else. And it dawned on me much time later, I'd had a racist experience when I was a kid at the age of 10. I was the only black Cub Scout in a parade and some people threw some rocks and bottles and soda pop cans at me. And I didn't understand it. My 10-year-old brain could not process how somebody who had never seen me before, never spoken to me, knew nothing about me, would want to inflict pain upon me for no other reason than the color of my skin. It just made no sense. And I formed a question back then in my mind, which was, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And I've been looking for that answer for 53 years. So anyway, after I left that band, much time had passed and it suddenly dawned on me, Daryl, the answer to your question that has been plaguing you since the age of 10, it fell right into your lap and you didn't realize it. Who better to ask that question of than someone who would go so far as to join an organization that has over a 100-year history of practicing hating people who do not look like them and who do not believe as they believe. Get back in contact with that Klansman and get him to fix you up with the Grand Dragon. Grand Dragon means state leader, all right? Like you and I would call a governor. The national leader, which you and I call the Imperial Wizard, which you and I call the president, they call the Imperial Wizard. So every state where there's a Klan chapter has a Grand Dragon, and then they have an Imperial Wizard. So I'm living in Maryland now. So I figured, okay, I want to interview the Grand Dragon of Maryland and ask him that question. He doesn't know me, I don't know him, but how can you hate me when you don't even know me? So I got back in touch with that guy, and he was very reluctant to give me the contact information for the Grand Dragon. The guy's name was Roger Kelly, the Grand Dragon. And finally, he gave it to me on the condition that I not tell Mr. Kelly where I got his personal information. So I agreed, and he warned me. He said, Daryl, do not fool with Roger Kelly. Roger Kelly will kill you. He was very genuinely concerned about my safety. And he did not want Mr. Kelly to know where I got his information because he was concerned about his own safety as well. So I assured him that, I would not reveal it. And I said, but that's the whole reason I need to see Mr. Kelly. Why would he do that when he doesn't even know me? So I had my secretary, who was white, give Mr. Kelly a call. Now, I only mention her skin color, not because I care, but it's important to the story. I'm the one who had Roger Kelly's number. I could have called him myself, but I figured if I called him, he might recognize in my voice that I'm black and say, I'm not talking to you, click. And then my whole project would have ended before it ever got started, because I wanted to be, and I became, the first Black author to write a book on the Ku Klux Klan from conducting in-person, face-to-face interviews. And so I knew that if Mary called him, he would know by her voice that she's a white lady, and he would not automatically assume that this white woman is working for a Black man, especially a Black man who was writing a book on the Klan, because they didn't exist. So that would up my chances of having this meeting with them. And then when he met me, obviously he could see that I'm Black, and he could decide then and there if he wanted to talk to me or whatever. So I told her, don't tell him that I'm Black unless he asks. So she called him. He didn't ask what color I was. He agreed to do the interview. Now, we set it up for 5:15 at a motel up in Frederick, Maryland. And Mary and I got there super early. I gave her some money. I sent her down the hall to get soda pop out of the machine, put it in the ice bucket, fill it with ice, get it all cold, because I wanted to be hospitable. You know, I had no idea what this man was going to do when he arrived. Would he look at me and say, I'm not going to talk to you and go home? Or would he come in the room and do the interview? Or would he attack me? I had no idea. But I knew that I was going to be hospitable. So she got the ice and soda pop, got it all cold, set it on the dresser, and we waited. Now, if you folk are standing in the hallway of this motel at the doorway looking in, you cannot see who is in the room. You have to walk through the doorway, walk around the corner, and then you see the room. So I took the lamp table, took the lamp off, and put the table in the most obscure corner of the room, so whoever came in had to come halfway in before they would see me. And I put a chair on one side for Mr. Kelly, a chair on this side for me. And I had a little black canvas bag beside me that contained a cassette recorder and some blank cassettes. I put the recorder in the center of the table, all in hopes that if Mr. Kelly did come in, he would agree to allow me to, record the interview. So I'm all ready. Right on time, 5:15, there's a knock on the door, and Mary hops up and runs around the corner to open the door. I'm seated at my table, just waiting. In walks what is known as the Grand Nighthawk. Nighthawk in Klan terminology means bodyguard, security. So a Grand Nighthawk is the bodyguard to the Grand Dragon. And an Imperial Nighthawk would be the bodyguard to the Imperial Wizard. So in walks this Grand Nighthawk. He's wearing military camouflage with the Ku Klux Klan insignia, the red patch, white cross, blood drop over here on his chest. Over here are the letters KKK, and embroidered on his cap, it said Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. And on his hip, he had a semi-automatic handgun in a holster. So he comes around the corner. Mr. Kelly is walking directly behind him in a dark blue suit and tie. And the Nighthawk turned the corner and saw me and just froze. Well, Mr. Kelly did not realize that his Nighthawk stopped short and he slammed into his back and knocked him forward. So now they both are stumbling around trying to regain their balance. And I'm just sitting there at the table, watching them. And I could read their faces like a highway billboard sign. They were thinking, did the desk clerk give us the wrong room number? Or was this an ambush? Because, they were expecting a white guy to be there. And so I saw the apprehension, and I stood up and I displayed my palms to show I had nothing in my hands. And I walked forward. I put my right hand out. I said, hi, Mr. Kelly. I'm Daryl Davis. He shook my hand, and the Nighthawk shook my hand. So far, so good. I said, come on in, please, come on in. Have a seat. Mr. Kelly sat down, and the Nighthawk stood at attention to his right. And before I could sit down on my side of the table, this is just a little coffee, like a little lamp coffee table, Mr. Kelly says, Mr. Davis, do you have any form of identification? I said, sure. And I gave him my driver's license. And he says, oh, you live on such and such street in Silver Spring. Now that had me a little unnerved because, why is he looking at my address? All he needs to do is look at my name, look at my picture, look at me, make sure it's the same person, and give me back my license. Here he is calling off my street and everything. But I did not want to let him know that I was unnerved. So I said, yes, Mr. Kelly, I do live there. And you live at, and I named his house number and his street. That way I was leveling the playing field. You know where I live, I know where you live. You come visit me, I'm going to come visit you. So we're going to confine all this visiting to this motel room, right? And that's what I was implying. He smiled, he nodded his head like he understood. I did not find out that day, but much later, a few months later, I had been very presumptuous. I had no reason to fear that Mr. Kelly was going to come to my house and do anything nefarious. What it was, one of his members lived right down the road from my house. My road runs through two neighborhoods. And so Mr. Kelly would have to travel down my street to get to his member's house. So he simply recognized the street name, that was all. Oh. But I had no way of knowing that at that time.
Daryl Davis, this is There's so much. Can you stick around? I need
Sure.
you to stick around. Okay, because I have a billion questions, and tomorrow's your birthday. So happy early birthday.
Thank you.
Happy early birthday to you. And this is a gift that you've given to us, this conversation, because I struggle every day. Every day I have landed on the problem in this country is people's identity to something that doesn't exist, which is this made up construct of race. And because they're so wedded to it, and because 75% of so-called white people in this country have no relationship. That was a study done 6 years ago. Washington Post did a survey. 3/4 of whites have no relationship with blacks. They don't know us. So the social media outlets, the true race baiters, the folks that are flame throwing, get to fill up, coupled with the media, television, and movies. These tropes and these stereotypes become inculcated. And the fear is there. And also the distance that you want to have from those despicable people. And then it just grows because there's no relationship to dispel it. And any relationship you have is subordinate. So it feeds the narrative, right? When 74% of us are not in poverty, you're not hanging out with that or us. And then there's the exceptional magical Negro, which I think you fell into at some point. If we don't solve this problem, we won't have a country. This is going to be the thing that will take us down. And quicker than Rome ever thought. We're talking, he's got is the book out, the new one, the latest book?
Not yet. It should be out later on. Yeah, that'll be out probably later on this year.
The Clan Whisperer. Okay, y'all can pre-order it, I'm sure. It'll be out later this year, but definitely get his first book, which is Clan Destin. I like that, Clan Destin. So, go ahead. Cena's been like, can I please ask a question of the man? He's my hero. He's the reason why I treat people the way I do. Please go ahead.
Well, to Karen's point, and it's so wonderful to meet you, Daryl.
My pleasure.
Yeah, the reason she brings that up is because I love talking to, arch conservatives, extremists of all kinds, and trying to find out where they're coming from. And watching your documentary was one of those inspirational moments for me of being able to see someone do that in action. I guess my biggest question for you is the how. What goes on in your head when you are sitting across the table from someone that, hates your very existence for nothing you did other than your existence? And how do you hold space in that moment to have the conversation that you want to have?
Well, for one thing, several things, but one is I realize that racism is an illness. It's a mental illness. And so, when you look at it in that context, somebody is mentally ill. So you don't want to attack them and hurt them, things like that, but you want to help them. You want to educate them, help them to cure that mental illness, because it turns into fear. They fear the unknown. And I've had the benefit of travel. Out of the 195 countries in our world today, I have been to 57 of them on 6 continents. I've been to 49 of our 50 states. And I can tell you something, no matter how far or how close I've gone from the United States, whether it's right next door to Canada or Mexico or halfway around the globe, no matter how different people may appear to me, they look different, they speak different, they worship differently or practice a different culture. When I get back home here to the US, I conclude one thing. We all are human beings. And as such, we all want these same basic 5 things in our lives, regardless of where you may live. We all want to be loved. We all want to be respected. We all want to be heard. We all want to be treated fairly. And we all want the same thing for our family as anybody else wants for their family. And if we employ those 5 core values in whatever society or culture we find ourselves in with which we may be unfamiliar, I can guarantee that your navigation will be much more smooth and much more positive. And I employ those values in, when I'm in the culture of white supremacy. And I engage in conversation. I'm a firm believer that a missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution. Nothing gets resolved without having some kind of conversation about it, and we have to put our emotions behind us.
Karen, I'm
going to. So Daryl Davis, you invited people to sit and talk with you in a one-on-one setting. Every day I'm on this airwave with one purpose, and that's to empower my people. And to, in many ways, model what power looks like, what agency looks like, what it looks like to be free, because many of us are always looking at ourselves through somebody else's lens. So I have a particular mission here. So when someone comes in to interrupt, I don't really give a damn if they have a mental illness. They're here to interrupt something that is edifying to the people who are listening to it. And I'm going to treat it accordingly. I get what you're saying, but I also feel that the work to extricate themselves from their mental illness is their work. And you have made this your mission, and that is to be applauded, because somebody's got to do that. Somebody also has to stir the pot, irritate, create the truth that is hard to swallow, and make sure that it is being disseminated without apology, because I think, you know, your tone and your manner is very welcoming. We all are born with different personalities. And I think we should use whatever tools God has given us to do the things that we have been called to do. And while I absolutely agree with you, somebody has to do it. It ain't going to be me. So I'm just going to be very clear about that for all the people listening. Like, see, Karen, if you just, no, I'm not, nope, that's his calling. I'm not called to be that. So I applaud you for being in that position. And I do understand, you know, like, we're up against something that is a founding principle of this country. This country only exists because of the disparity, right? It exists to keep a class of people constantly feeding the people at the top. And so there's a built-in kind of mechanism to keep it in place. At every turn, when you try to disrupt that, right? So how do you deal with that? You're dealing with individuals where we have an education system that is racist. We have a workplace that is racist. We have a criminal justice system that is racist. How do we
Absolutely. Everything you're saying is 100% spot on. But you're talking systemic racism. Who is behind the system? Man. The system doesn't create itself. Man creates that system. So when you put somebody better in place to run the system changes. You look at the system from 2 presidents ago. Look at the system from the last president. Who ran the system? Man. So when you influence the individuals and they are working within the system begins to change. So, you know, another thing that's going on here, which I'll get to in a second, let me just finish what happened when these guys came inside the room. All right. Every time, because so Mr. Kelly's sitting down, we begin this conversation. Whenever my recorder ran out of tape, I would reach down to get a fresh cassette out of the bag. Every time I reach down like this, the Nighthawk would reach up like this and put his hand on the butt of his gun. Now, I understood that. I didn't have a problem with that. He's the bodyguard. He is protecting his boss. He does not know me. He does not know what's in the bag. As far as they're concerned, I'm the enemy, right? I am not the object of their affection. That's why they joined the Ku Klux Klan, all right? So I got that. After an hour or so, or even shorter, the bodyguard relaxed. I went in and out of the bag. He didn't move. He realized there was no threat in the bag. But then Mr. Kelly and I are talking just casually. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, there was a fast, very short noise, like a shh. That was it. It came out of nowhere. And we all jumped. And we all were in fear. Now, I'm a Black guy. I'm sitting in a room with the head of the Klan. I'm not armed. The bodyguard is armed. I don't know if Mr. Kelly has a weapon up under his suit jacket. My secretary is not armed. So I'm fearing for my life. I went in because the noise was so short and so fast, my ear could not discern what it was. So I perceived it to be an ominous, threatening noise. And the guy who had told me, Daryl, don't fool with Roger Kelly, he'll kill you. So all that's going through my head. So I went into what's called survival mode. When you fear for your life, you go into survival mode. And in survival mode, you can only do about 1 of 4 things. Some people, they just pass out, they faint, because the fear is so great, their brain cannot process it, and it shuts down. Other people, their muscles constrict, and they ball up and they can't move and they start shaking. That's called paralysis by fear. Another thing people do is run away. That is your best option. As quickly as you can, separate yourself from the source of fear. Get out of there, right? That was not an option for me because you cannot outrun a bullet in a motel room, right? And I'm not armed. The fourth option is to do a preemptive strike. Get them before they get you. I flew out of my chair. I was ready to dive across the table, grab the bodyguard, grab Mr. Kelly, and slam them down to the ground and take away the bodyguard's gun, immobilize the danger, because it's my job to protect me and protect my secretary, just like it's his job to protect himself and his boss. When I hit the table, I was looking right into Mr. Kelly's eyes, and I didn't say a word. My eyes were speaking loud and clear. My eyes were saying to him, "What did you just do?" Well, his eyes had locked with my eyes. He didn't say a word either, but I could read his eyes. His eyes were saying to me, "What did you just do?" And the bodyguard's like this, looking at both of us like, "What did either one of y'all just do?" Well, Mary realized what happened. She's over here sitting to my left on top of the dresser because there were no more chairs. The ice in the ice bucket had begun melting, and the cans of soda were shifting. That was it. And we all began laughing. We all began laughing at how ignorant we all had been. And this is a teaching moment, a teaching moment. The lesson taught here, somebody almost got shot over a damn ice cube, right? The teaching moment is this: all because some foreign, _ circle the word foreign, entity of which we were ignorant, that being the bucket of ice cans of soda, had entered into our little comfort zone via the noise that it made, we became fearful of one another. Ignorance breeds fear. We fear those things of which we are ignorant. If you do not address that fear will escalate into hatred because we hate the things that frighten us. If you don't address that hatred, it will escalate into destruction. We want to destroy the things that we hate. Why? Because we're afraid of them. But guess what? They may have been harmless and we were simply ignorant. We saw the whole chain almost unravel to completion. It stopped short of the last part, destruction. Had the Nighthawk shot me or shot somebody, or had I pounced across the table and hurt one of them. We did see that whole chain unravel to full completion almost 4 years ago on August 12th, 2017 in Charlottesville, Virginia, where they had that major white supremacy rally. I know all those people. I know the guy who put on that rally. I know him personally. I've had dinner with him, all right? I'll explain that later. But anyway, yes, I do. But anyway, on that day in Charlottesville, there was a lot of ignorance in Charlottesville. There was a lot of fear. There was a lot of hatred. What did it culminate in? It culminated in destruction when a white supremacist got inside his vehicle and tried to murder as many counter-protesters as he could by driving full speed, full force into the crowd. He succeeded in injuring 20 people and murdering one young lady named Heather Heyer. So ignorance breeds fear, fear breeds hatred, hatred breeds destruction. Now here's what's happening. We are going about solving this problem the wrong way. In departments and corporations and things like that, you solve problems top down. If the top management levels, whatever, is straight, all the subordinates downstairs will be straight. If they're loose up top, that trickles down, everybody down below is loose, like the police. When the police are doing their job at the top, their officers on the street are doing their job, okay? So it's a top down. But when you're dealing with racism, that's not working. It's gotta be bottom up. Let's forget about the destruction. Let's forget about the hate. I know they're troublesome, forget them. Forget about the fear. The destruction, the hate, the fear are all symptoms. They're all byproducts of the nucleus, the root cause. The root cause is racism. The root cause is ignorance. If you solve the problem of ignorance, then there's nothing to fear, because we fear that of which we're ignorant. With nothing to fear, there's nothing to hate. With nothing to hate, there's nothing to destroy. The good thing is this: there is a cure for ignorance. That cure is called education. and
Mhm.
exposure. And that's where we need to invest our efforts, our energy, and our finances.
But people have to want to be exposed. You went into their den of iniquity. You played the piano, forged a relationship, and that relationship didn't stop that man from planning that riot, that rally in Charlottesville. That relationship with you didn't change him enough to keep Heather Heyer alive and those 20 people from not getting injured. So I think there's a willful ignorance. It is, to me, almost incurable. I'm really hopeful of this next generation. These young people seem to be more and more apt to, not except for a handful, but as a culture, these young 18, 19, 15, 16-year-olds, they get it, but they don't seem to want to know. Even listening to this, you can listen to this radio show and all you can come away with is that I hate white people. How?
No, see, no, you said earlier that, you're going to tell it straight. You're not going to, be swayed by there's no such thing as willful ignorance. There's ignorance and there is stupidity. Okay. And
Gotcha.
some people want to define them as being synonymous, not me. For me, an ignorant person is someone who makes the wrong choice or an incorrect decision because he or she does not have the facts or the correct information to make the right choice. A stupid person is someone who has the facts and still makes the wrong choice. So if
we got a lot of stupid people. We got a lot of stupid people in America. So
yes, there are.
What do we do with that?
Well, see, people, try to tell me all the time, it's not a black man's job to teach white people how to treat us. You know what? I've been here for 402 years. I came here in 1619 as a slave, right? And now we're in 2021. That's 402 years that I've been here.
Correction, I have to do this. You came here as a human being, stripped of humanity.
I came here as well.
And put into
enslaved.
bondage. Yes.
Okay.
You were a person.
So, right. I'm still a person. But when somebody has treated you that way for 402 years, maybe you better try a new approach. Forget all that. It's not our job to teach somebody. When somebody is oppressing you for that long, yes, it's your job to teach them how to treat you, unless you want to continue to be treated that way. So I have no problem sitting down and educating people.
I just want to be left alone. Like, Phil, think.
Well, so do they. Want. So do they.
Well, then stop bothering us.
But now here's the problem.
Get me off my neck. Stop bothering me. Stop following me around the store. Stop calling me out my name. Stop coming into my space. Stop calling up my radio show with your nonsense. Go to your place where you're comfortable. You don't have to come here.
But see, that's what they want. Okay, you're saying exactly what they want, because they go from white supremacy to white separatism. Our supremacy is all black people, all non-whites, non-Aryans, as they call themselves, leave. Go back to where you came from. A white separatist is black people can be here, Hispanics can be here, Jews can be here, but they need to have their own place, their own radio show, their own school, their own workplace, their own parks.
What you're missing, I'm sorry, Daryl Davis, 75% of white folk, most of whom I'm sure would say they're not racist, already self-segregate. So the problem's much bigger, right? If you already, and you don't think you're racist, right? I just want a nice school. I just want a nice neighborhood. 75% of white folk in this country already self-segregate. They're already white separatists.
Right.
So there's a larger issue.
White separatists and white supremacists and white nationalists, to me, are all the same thing. They're just varying degrees of it. But let me tell you what's happening here, Karen. When I was a kid, the black population in this country was 12%. Native Americans, 1%. Hispanic, Latino people, right around 2%. Asian people, right around 3%. White people, 84, 86%. This country was built on a two-tier society, with white supremacy being the top tier, slavery being the bottom tier. And as we progress through the years, we progress proportionately like this. Maybe a little closer like this, but never on an even keel. Today, in 2020, 2021, black people remain at 12%, 12.9, almost 13%. We really have not grown in this country. Native Americans remain at 1%. Asian people have grown to 6% in this country. Hispanic, Latino people have jumped to 17 point something percent. So if you take just black people at 12% and Hispanic people at 17%, that right there is 29% non-white. This is happening in the country. And it is well predicted that in the year 2042, which is 21 years from now, this country, for the first time in history, will be 50-50. 50% white, 50% non-white. And while there are a lot of white people who accept that, and they don't have a problem with that. Hey, that's evolution. I can deal with that, no problem. There is a certain segment of this population, hold on, there's a certain segment of this population that refuses to accept that. And they don't want to see that happen. They know it's going there because right now in this country, as of 2020, the white population in this country is 59%. So when you have sat on the throne of power for 400 years, you do not want to get off. Look at our last president. He was only there for 4 years. He didn't want to get off. He wanted to overturn the election.
Daryl Davis, listen, and I've processed it. I started this show 6-7 years ago talking about that very stat, that very statistic, and it was 2040. The reality is, and this needs to be the narrative, there is no such thing as white or black. These ideals are made up. And if we can start to have that conversation, then that other thing matters not, because we're people who come from different places, who have different shades of melanin. This white construct was created to keep this fight. So as long as you and others are having this conversation about 2042 and the racial disparity, you're feeding the narrative. You're feeding that beast that we're trying to defeat. And I think that that's at the crux of the problem here, that we have identified this thing, because throughout time, what they've done is, okay, Irish, they're dogs. Oh, nope, we're running out of numbers. Bring them in. Italians, no dogs, no Jews, no blacks, no Italians, no N-words, no Italians. Up, let them come in. Polish, come on into whiteness. Asians, y'all can double Dutch along with the Jewish people you're conveniently white when we need you. When you're not, no Jews will replace us, Charlottesville. They've been playing with this thing called race. This is the difference between transatlantic slave trade in the new world called America and every place else. That racial construct, which can wax and wane, can expand and contract. And that's the power structure that I think we're really fighting against, that no one's talking about except for me.
Well, wait a minute. Now, hold on now. You and I know that there is no such thing as race. It's a human race. What they are calling race, or what we're referring to race right now, is a man-made construct. Yes, but you are not going to convince anybody of that overnight. It's going to be years.
So we got to first start with the language, though, Daryl Davis. If you can just not use those words to talk about 50, because now they're identifying, they're wedded to it. When people call up, I'm a white person.
What do you mean now they're identifying? They've always been identifying.
Right, but when you ask them to define it, they cannot. And that's where we know, to me, where the entry point should be. If I ask you, I'm a white man, I'm a white woman, define what it means to be white, and you can't give me an answer, that to me starts to pull that thread and unravel this thing, because you bought into something that doesn't really exist and you can't define it, but it makes you who you are. So when I take it away from you, who are you, as Toni Morrison would say? Are you any good? Are you any good?
Well, let me explain something. White people, and I don't want to paint a broad brush. We have a unique situation in this country where this country owned people and bought and sold them. They were not considered 100% human beings. They were bought and sold on the courthouse steps. So there are other countries in which, quote unquote, white people live that did not own slaves. So we don't want to paint this broad brush across the entire white spectrum, which is why many Black people in this country, back in the 1940s, moved to France. Why? Because they were treated as equals in France.
Right, because French were they didn't consider themselves white. They were French. Europeans were Europeans. No. Germans were Germans. French were French. They did not buy into this thing.
Not true. Adolf, listen.
That whiteness is a relatively new.
Many people. You're talking nationality. French is a nationality. It's not a color. German. No,
it's not my phone vibrating.
Exactly. Okay,
whose phone is that? That's your phone, Daryl. Get your phone.
My phone.
Yeah, somebody's phone is not mine.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
French is a nationality, as is German, as is Swedish. All right. But why did, quote unquote, Black Americans moved to France, okay, to be with people who look just like the white people over here, because it's a different mindset. We were welcome over there. We were treated as equals. And that's what we need to get people to understand, that we all are human beings.
Yeah, but to get there, first you have to
debunk.
To get to that place, you have to first debunk that there's something fundamentally different about you because of this white label. That there's something fundamentally better about you because of this white label.
And what do you think I'm doing when I'm talking to those people? I'm debunking it. I'm debunking it. And back to Roger Kelly, who was the head of the Klan, okay? He ended up leaving the Klan because of these conversations. This is his robe and hood right here that I'm holding in my hand. Yo. That's the robe of the Imperial Wizard, okay? And this right here is his hood.
House? Oh,
huh?
Jesus.
He's got more than that.
I'm struggling.
I got a ton more than that. But
got a ton.
That, you know, you have to have these conversations. You're not going to educate anybody if you don't sit down and have a conversation. They're not going to come to it on their own.
Yeah, which is why I always ask the question. So what was your entry point that changed Mr. Kelly? What changed him?
The conversation over time. It wasn't one thing or another thing. It wasn't a straw that broke the camel's back. It was him seeing the humanity in me, seeing that he wants the same things that I want. Now, I know that. I know Mr. Kelly, okay? I know the ones that I've changed. There are others who will go to their grave being hateful, violent, and racist. But over 200 have left the ideology of white supremacy due to the conversations that we've had. They have and they have come out and come on stage with me and renounced it on stage. They work in places trying to prevent other people from joining these organizations, and they're pulling people out. If you want some time, I will, you invite me back. I will bring on some former neo-Nazis and former KKK.
Jesus.
Can I come?
Yeah, I think
and you can ask them. What was
you got to do that when I'm not here? Because listen, we got way too much. Fill in, Cena. You invite them because I feel like there's already a burden that we have to suffer through every single day just being Black in America. That Black tax is real, it comes with an inordinate amount of stress. And now you're putting an extra burden. I got to go out and educate the ignorant ass people out here too.
Yes,
no, I'm not doing that. I do not.
Well, how's that working? You're sitting there complaining.
I'm not complaining. I am not complaining. Let me just be clear. You are complaining. I am not complaining. I am good. What I'm saying is there is no way in hell that you're going to put the burden on the people who are oppressed to go out and one by one educate folk who know damn good and well, especially those, because they sit their asses in church on Sunday praying to a false God. Because there's no God that you are actually praying to that's any good that would condone the way in which you feel about people. I'm sorry. I appreciate and applaud that you do that.
Let me ask you a question. I don't think
that's a message for all of us. I don't think so.
Was there oppression 20 years ago? Were you oppressed 20 years ago?
I don't think I've been oppressed. How about that? I'm actually pretty privileged.
Well, if you're so privileged, then why are you afraid of engaging with somebody?
I'm not afraid of engaging with anybody. I don't feel I have time to build. I'm building pyramids out in these streets. I'm building the world that I want to live in. I don't have time to educate.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Okay,
I'm building the
so
world.
Can we agree? You do what you do. I'm not going to disparage it. I'm just saying it's not something I'm going to do.
But how's that working out for you?
It works well for me.
How's it working out for your kids?
I don't have any, so it works great for them.
Let me rephrase. How is it working out for future generations?
Go ahead, Cena.
And the Iranian. Let me just jump in.
Yes, go ahead, because Heather Heyer's dead, and you sat with this guy, and she's still dead. Yes, go ahead, Cena.
I think there is space, and I think there's space for both, and I think both need to happen because what I know Daryl is doing is almost like on the front lines, getting in there. And, in every war, you have people that are doing different things. And if this isn't a war, I don't know what war is. It's just manifesting itself differently. I think, Karen, you do the building of the infrastructure of what needs to happen to get there. And Daryl, you are on the front lines trying to break down the barriers that white people have created, right? You are physically going there and breaking those things down. And I think there is plenty of room for both of you, obviously both of you, to be in existence.
Yeah, I'm not going anywhere.
The
so
same,
yeah, they better be
Okay, so
same work.
yeah.
I hear what you're saying, but let me ask you a question. So let's just pick a point in time that we say the civil rights movement started. Let's just say 1955. Can we agree on that?
No, false construct. Again, that was people saying, please see me, please give me rights, please give me justice, please don't beat me in the head when I go across this bridge. I'm going to expose your inhumanity for a split second, like George Floyd. People are going to be like, oh, this is so horrible. I'm going to get off my couch. I'm going to fight for the rights. And then we rinse and repeat. People go back to their stettles in this country. 75% of them go right back to where they were, and they get to ignore everything that's actually happening. I'm saying fine. While you do that,
so
I'm gonna
you
make
don't,
sure
so
that
you
our
don't
kids
see,
are educated.
You don't see any changes between 1955 to 1968 or from 2020 to now.
Well, when Trump got elected, hell no. When 74 million people decided they wanted more of it, yeah, that's a lot of people. Nah, not a lot, not fundamental, not enough for it to really make a difference. It's incremental enough to keep the system in place. And that is something that we need to definitely address at the core of the actual system. You're doing person by person, and you're right. People make the system, but it's much bigger than that. And I feel what you're doing. Cena's right. You need to do that. But that can't be the prevailing thought for all of us.
Let me just interject something here. And this is where I think you're wrong. Okay, I'm not disparaging you. I'm just saying I think
well,
you're
that
wrong.
Is sort
Okay?
of because
no.
Just, you don't agree
Karen,
with me.
Hear me
doesn't
out.
mean that I'm wrong, though.
It may not mean you're wrong. I didn't say you were wrong. I said I think you're wrong. Okay, I didn't say you were wrong. I said I think you're wrong. Okay, one's perception is one's reality. You know that. I know that. Okay, I perceive that to be wrong. It may not be wrong. Okay,
it's not.
I may not be right. Okay, but I think
why can't we both be right? Why can't why does one of us have to be wrong?
Well, hold on a second. We both can be right. I just happen to think that you're wrong. I may be wrong about how I think about you. I'm open to that, but I'm just telling you how I think. Listen, in yesteryear, from 55 to 68 or whatever, the powers that be, when they saw the marches, the protests, the boycotts, the sit-ins, the powers that be, of course, is the white power structure. What did they see? They saw a sea of Black people with a smattering of white people mixed in who got the vision, and they came out to support us, but mostly Black people. So they plugged their ears. They didn't want to hear what we had to say. All right, they shut us down. So the pages turned very, very slowly. In the lynching of George Floyd, and I call that a lynching, not just a murder, it was a lynching, in my opinion, of George Floyd, okay? Because partially due to coronavirus, people are not going to work, all right? They're staying home, their businesses are shut down. What happened to George Floyd, we have seen time and time and time again over the decades, all right? We know that's nothing new to us, Black people, but white people who did not go to work because they couldn't go to work, what are they doing at home? They're browsing the internet, they're watching TV, and what do they see? They see a lynching unfold before their eyes, and they cannot believe it. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. We believe it. They couldn't believe it because they'd never seen it before like this. And what did they do? Many of them came out despite the health risk to themselves and joined us in our protests and march. And now the power structure, powers that be, are seeing a sea of white people and a sea of Black people, people who look like them joining together. It is that collective voice that has made those pages turn a lot faster. In the past, we have never seen police officers be arrested so quickly. It would take months and months and months for a cop to even be charged, and then he'd probably get off. Today, they're being charged like that. And we saw a larger ripple effect than we've ever seen in 2020 because of that collective voice of Blacks and whites working together. We saw NASCAR, ground zero for the Confederate flag, remove their Confederate flag. We saw the sovereign state of Mississippi remove the Confederate portion out of their flag. We saw Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben's food labels change their branding.
Symbolic.
We've seen legislation be written to take down Confederate statues, to change names of buildings named after slave owners. We've never seen that kind of ripple effect happen that quickly. It is
and
the
just in that, since June, and so yeah, that's a filibuster. Since June, 60% of Americans thought that George Floyd was murdered. USA Today 2 weeks ago, that is now down to 36%. I said in June, we had a short window to go through, and all of those things you're talking about hasn't changed the wage gap in this country, hasn't changed the education system in this country, hasn't changed the health disparities in this country. You're talking about symbolism. And I wasn't for taking down all of the monuments, to be quite frank with you, because I think that there are lessons to be learned in having them up. You're talking about symbolism. Barack Obama, symbolism, followed by Donald J. Trump. There's a heart condition that Reverend Barber talks about, and you're not going to fix that. Maybe person by person, I give you that. Do that work. But to expect the rest of us to take our hard-earned time and energy to go out and educate people who have no will to do it, and you already called them stupid on these airwaves. That, to me, that time and energy could be spent on us educating, re-educating ourselves, building the communities that we want to live in, building the schools that we want to live in, and having the people around us who actually care about us. And I don't make distinctions because I don't call people white people, because they're people. 30% of the people who listen to the show have very little melanin, and they're part of this family, and they're welcome in here. But what you're talking about is something that, you know, it may work person to person, but the wholesale change, this is incremental. So after civil rights, we got what? This whole criminalization of Black people, crack, heroin, and under the Nixon and the Reagan administration, they flooded our community, built up these prisons, and then had slavery all over again, reduxed in a different kind of way. There's something bigger going on here.
And how's that working for you?
You keep asking that question like because that means something. You keep giving me the solutions. That's a meaningless question, and it's not. You know, and you're doing that to try to make, you know, to diminish the thing that I'm saying because you don't agree with it. And that's fine. Don't agree with it. No, I'm asking you, Karen. I applaud you.
What is what you're doing?
I told you it was working well. You don't want to accept that.
Well, we still have.
Let's go to the phones. Let's go to the phones, please. Okay. I don't want to argue with you. Let's go to the phones. Thomas in North Carolina.
Good afternoon. You know what? I have listened to you since you first got on Sirius XM. I tell you what, I am a very much supporter. And I'll honest, everything you're saying, I'm 67 years old. I was classified 1A for the draft back in 1970.
What happened?
Okay. No, let me tell you something. What you're saying is true. You can't go to the enemy and ask the enemy to love you. Let me tell you, you know, everything you say has been proven. If you've got over 70,000 people voting for things that stay the same, then they don't want to make a change. It's because it takes them out of alignment. It's like they don't want to be on an even playing field. They want to simply always have it because the actual fabric of this country is so deep seated within the racism part, and anybody who can't see that has got to be either crazy or stupid. Let me tell you something.
No. So
we can't go.
All right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I feel like, you know, and I'm looking at the call, so I don't want this to be, hey, Karen, I support you, because it's very clear that Daryl, Mr. Davis doesn't listen to the show, doesn't know me, hasn't been experienced in what we've been doing here. So I'm going to give him a pass today, because I'm going to take that very personally. You keep, how's it working out for you? Very, very condescending. So I'm gonna let you get. I'm gonna let you get that. It's
not meant to be condescending.
It is very condescending because you don't come in with any knowledge. You don't know what this is. So you're talking to somebody who's been for the last 7 years with receipts. All you got is some people, and then you admitted on these airwaves that that's your guy you ate dinner with, and you had broken bread with this guy that went to Charlotte and organized something that had people killed. So I'm struggling with being in alignment with you. I get it. You got this book coming out.
Basically, what I'm hearing from you, Karen.
No, you're not hearing.
No, I am hearing.
You're not.
And what I'm telling you, what I'm hearing. What I'm hearing from you is nobody can change. They are what they are.
No, that's not what you're hearing. You're not hearing that at all. That's what you want to hear. That's not what you're hearing.
Well, what you want to hear is that I'm condescending. I'm not condescending. I'm not trying to insult you. I like you. Okay. Now, but you want to hear it as condescending. That's your business.
Yeah, it is, because it's not rooted in anything that you know. You know, how is that working out? How is that working out?
Well, I know how it's working out for me.
Well, how is it working out for you, Daryl?
It's working out for me fine.
Good. Me too.
It's not really
Go.
working out for
Don't.
me. I don't know if that's a big deal for anybody, but I just
Go ahead,
wanted to bring
Cena.
that up.
Ah,
I don't know if
yeah.
that was. I mean, who speaks
What?
for me, really? Who speaks for me? No.
Yeah,
Speak
all
for
right.
yourself.
I'm
So-
doing it. Thank
so-
you.
I'm going to tell you thank you for being here. We should have this conversation when I'm not here, bringing your Klansmen to talk with Cena on another channel, because we got enough to do here. We got time for this. But I appreciate you. Thank you for joining me, and much respect to you, Daryl
Aaron,
Davis.
thank you very much. I hope we can talk again sometime.
Okay.
if
All
you're
right. We
willing.
might need to have a Klan mediate our conversation. A Klansman. We should film that. Cena. Let's
I'm
talk
on it.
after the.
Anytime
talk.
you like,
Okay.
I'm always open to come talk to you.
All right.
Anytime.
Appreciate you. What?
Thank
We
you all
gotta go.
very much. I appreciate it. You take good
Thank
care.
Thank you, Daryl.